Welcome back to the Sports Complex on a Thursday afternoon. Got a big show for you coming up today. We're here all day. Rangers are off. That means a full 2-hour show of the Sports Complex today. We're going to talk a lot more Texas versus Alabama. Sark spoke to the media today. We'll play you some of that audio, tell you what it means for the Alabama game. Patrick's Big Fat Poll today. Joe Cook joins us at 5:30 to talk more Texas recruiting, Alabama, all Texas football there. And as we get into the NFL season, Chiefs and Lions tonight, news keeps coming out about that game. We will get into some NFL predictions for you as well, get you ready for NFL kickoff tonight with the Chiefs and Lions. All that coming up on the show, and you can be a part of it. 512-337-3776. 512-337-3776 is the text line number, how you can join the conversation here on the show. Remember, you can follow me on all social media at It's Patrick Davis. We'll see if I imbibe enough tonight to start tweeting about this game. If it gets to a point, we'll see. I'm excited, though. NFL football. I may have a fantasy player or two in this game, so I'm getting excited about it. Looking forward to tonight's game. But I'm also very much looking forward to the game Saturday night in Alabama, in Tuscaloosa. It is going to be a big one, Texas versus Alabama. We all know what's on the line. It's one of those games where so much is on the line, and both coaches have to kind of slow play it, and everybody has to slow play it. We saw Brian Kelly, as much as it's silly that he got so much flack for saying we're going to beat the heck out of FSU, and then they lose, and he says he didn't say it. Just say you said it. You were a coach at a coach's show. It wasn't like you were, saying it behind the scene. It was a dark secret that you said it. You said it to fans because you were justifying that we have a lot of young guys on the team, and then he says we have a bunch of young guys that this is going to be their first real big road trip for LSU. A lot of young guys who haven't done this kind of thing before, but we're still going to beat the heck out of FSU. I don't mind this, but so both coaches are slow playing it because they don't want to have that moment. They don't want to be, put over the coals for saying anything. So you don't want to make it too much. If you lose the game, you don't want this to be your season. But we know what it can mean for your team. Sark spoke to the media this morning on his Thursday Zoom call. We get some audio from that. Let's start off with the opening statement. Sark, as he gets ready to go into what Texas fans have been waiting for all offseason. I know as somebody who works in a platform where we deal with Texas fans, and I'm a Texas fan, and my friends are Texas fans. There's a lot of anticipation for this game for the entire season. Here's Sark in leading up to this week. What you got to do?
A little bit about the week of preparation with our team, and last week I thought we had a good week of preparation and felt good about it. But our players always seem to go to another level and take me to a space of, wow, they have more in there. And I thought these 4 days of practice this week have been really good. I thought the intensity's been great. The mental intensity has been on point. Tuesdays and Wednesdays for us are always, tough, physical, hard practices. And then Thursday today, what I liked is thinking back to last Thursday was, we were really dialed in today on the details. And I think that's what it's going to take, and I think back to last Thursday and we were a little spotty. And then inevitably in the ball game, we were a little spotty with some of our details that hurt us at times. And so I'm really encouraged today knowing that, man, we had some hard physical practices on Tuesday and Wednesday. We were really dialed in from an execution standpoint today, because we know that that's what it's going to take in this ball game. We're playing a hard-nosed, tough, physical football team, but yet extremely well coached. And so those details are going to matter in this game in all three phases.
It is a week of preparation where, at Rice game, it's somewhat hard on it, as you get closer to that game to stay focused, to stay, completely in your game. If you have all off season, you're just ready for the game. You're just waiting for a game to let out, and you're waiting for Alabama, really. You don't even want to show up at that Rice game. And you, as a coach, want to show them that they need to be ready for every single game. And you can say the good takeaway from that Rice game is that Texas players got the wake-up call, that you cannot take any plays off You cannot take your focus off the ball for a second, because you're going to end up with what happened in that game, with what happened in, just the amount of times that Texas did not look ready and did not look like they were, set up to be a Big 12 championship team, not a national championship team. They didn't look like a Big 12 championship team at a lot of points in that first half. In the second half, they came out and looked a lot better in that game. But you have to get prepared. You have to stay focused. And you know that going into a hostile environment, that going in and there's game day, and going in and all the cameras are on you, and going in and everyone's, with everybody's phones blowing up and everybody's got everything going on, and the recruits are there, and just all the fanfare that goes into what's going to happen this week and week 2, your prime time, you're ready to go. You want to make a statement because, if you're Xavier Worthy or JT Sanders or even Isaiah Neyor, who didn't play a bunch, or, Jordan Whittington or an Adonai Mitchell, Quinn Ewers, Jalen Ford, Jalen Catalon, Tavondre Sweat, all those guys, you want to make an impact, because you want to make an impact on NFL scouts. You want to jump up mock drafts and all of a sudden people be game planning for you. You want to take that step up, and there's a game, so you have to then take that inside of yourself, and as a leader for the younger guys, push that message down that we need to focus, we need to get our step up in our game, and we need to be really focused, because the O-line play cannot happen the same way. The misses in coverage, the free runs at the quarterback that happened in week 1 cannot happen in week 2. Sark was asked about if the O-line would be ready. He, after when he talked on Monday, he said that the physicality was not enough for his O-line. He said the physicality for a lot of the team wasn't there that he thought would be. The mental preparation, everything wasn't ready for that O-line. He gave a pretty quick answer to this one about how the O-line has been in practice this week and what they've put them through because of what they played like. We'll see if it works, but here's Sark when he was asked how the O-line, if the O-line's going to be ready after this week of practice.
Well, it's pretty intense this week. So if the game's anything like practice, we'll be okay. It was pretty intense.
So we saw they went out and were intense. Now, part of that is great. Part of that is, you want to see the team be more physical, but they weren't, even though Kelvin Banks had his worst game at Texas, even though there were some, not great blocks, that wasn't my problem as much. Now, you want the physicality to step up, but you need the communication to step up in this team as well. And if they're just running straight ahead, that's not exactly what we need. We need the offensive line to be able to read these defenses, because if you don't want to think that Alabama is going to take some things from that Rice game that worked and at least try them, at least try a couple ghost fronts, and at least try a couple, disguising fronts just to see. Let's see if we can get away with this and get a free shot on the quarterback, or get a turnover because he's going to throw the ball away and throw off his back foot. Let's see what we can do. We have, you want it to be, you want to be ready. You want to be, pumped up to go, because, this was against a Rice team that wasn't as big. You're about to go play against some big boy D linemen, and they're going to come at you. You're going to need to step your game up a little bit more. Here is Sark talking about Quinn's week of practice, because Quinn Ewers, while he didn't have a terrible game, didn't have a great game, he is going into a massive statement game where the media is going to be going after him. He's heard it all week, that something where I'm sure in his head he envisioned that after the Rice game, he was going to come out the hero and he was going to look real good. And his focus was going to have to be, I got some things to work on, but, don't let your head get too big. And I don't think that's the case at all after week 1. He's going to have to work on that. He's going to have to work on picking himself back up and saying, okay, these are the problems I had. This is what I didn't get. Go watch that game film. Dive into that game film and see what he didn't see. See all the different looks and try and change that. Here's Sark on Quinn's week of practice.
I mean, Quinn's had a really good week. I think he has a firm understanding of the game plan and what we're trying to do, whether it's our base down stuff, whether it's, third down, fourth down, and obviously in the red area. I think it's tough to go beat teams like that on the road without your quarterback playing well, so I think that, naturally, hopefully we can find a rhythm for him and create some opportunities. to take some shots, and that rapport with his receivers can shine through. Because you got to play a complete game. You can't be a one-dimensional team. And like I said, I think we're a really versatile team. I think Alabama's a very versatile team. Both teams can win games a variety of ways, but naturally, you need a complete game to go and try to win a game like this.
So that's where you talk about the complete game. The complete game, and I know there's parts in this where Sark talks about hopefully he can take a shot downfield, and hopefully he plays well enough that he can take a shot. I'm not as worried about that. Look, if that happens in the game, great. But that's not all on Quinn. That's on the play calling to allow Quinn to get to that point. That's on calling the right run plays, calling the right underneath passes, completing those types of plays, which we know you can complete. That's what that's about. That's not fully on Quinn. If Quinn's missing those, we're a long way away, and that's a big problem. I'm not worried about that. The deep shots you're worried about. But what you're really worried about is he going to be able to read these defenses? Is he going to be able to make the right play calls? We had a texter yesterday who I think brought up a good point that there probably wasn't they weren't allowed to check down on a lot of plays. Now, you still need to read who, the coverage is, and you still need to change who you're blocking. That you can do without audibling a play, but you're not going to check down a play. You're not going to audible a play in the Rice game because you don't want to show off any of what you've got ready to go. That makes sense to me. But Quinn Ewers needs to now have to be able to check his protections. Make sure if that O-line, if he sees something and he doesn't hear the O-line, get up on the center and get up on Jake Majors and ask, hey, we know he's coming, right? We're good. We have this communication. We know that guy, that linebacker is not about to come smoke me, right? We're on that level. That's what you want to see from the consistency of Quinn Ewers, is to make sure he gives himself the opportunity to put his back foot down and work on that footwork he worked on all offseason. That's what you want to see from him. You want to be able to see him really push the ability to get the ball downfield and throw a decent downfield pass. To do that, you need to have a clean pocket. To do that, he doesn't need to be running all the time. We need to see that. Sark was also asked about the backup QB depth. We're going into that. And Malik Murphy, of course, comes into the game. Arch doesn't play, but asked about how many quarterbacks are going to be taking to Alabama. Here's Sark.
We'll be taking 4. So Charles Wright will be the 4th one that'll be going. I think inevitably there's been a level of consistency in Malik's play that has been really encouraging. He's always had kind of the highlight plays, but then there's been plays that were not so highlight in taking care of the football. And I think he's done a much better job of doing that. Clearly I think we saw glimpses of some of the throws that he was able to make in that ball game last week. It was unfortunate. We made a couple errors on our end that kind of knocked drives back and kind of hurt ourselves. But I think Malik did plenty enough there in that game that showed us some confidence. And quite frankly, I had all intentions of playing Arch in that game. I didn't think that the fourth quarter would go as fast as it did. And then I didn't want to put him in there for, the last minute and a half and use a game on that. So, like I said, those guys continue to work hard and compete at it. Hopefully as the season goes on that they'll both get their opportunities to get in there and play.
Yeah, you do hope they get their opportunities, because if they get their opportunities, it means that that Texas is doing something right. And that's what you would hope to see. We did talk yesterday, but look, you don't hope that either guy gets into this game. You don't want Malik Murphy or Arch Manning, but we know after last year with the injuries, take as many guys as you can. You also want to get Arch the experience, and you want to have Charles right there in case things go terribly wrong. You can put in a quarterback that doesn't, work in there. You need a guy for some extra practices. I don't think Charles Wright's going to get in this game, but it's nice to get everybody the experience. It's nice to have everybody on the team. There is something interesting. We talked about it yesterday. One of the things Sark has going for him that a lot of other coaches may not against Alabama, but it is something that the previous coordinators have. When we talk about, previous assistants for Sark or for Saban against him, is with a new offensive coordinator, a new defensive coordinator coming in for Alabama, that there is, there's an air of mystery of what Tommy Rees is going to bring play calling wise, what Kevin Steele, the defensive coordinator, is going to bring play calling wise, what they're going to bring in and implement into their defense and offense. But Sark we brought this up yesterday. Sark has a better viewpoint because he mentioned on Monday the consistency of Saban relies on everything being Alabama way and Nick Saban way. So even when you come in, there's things that you can change and things you can't. And Sark knows what you can change and what you can't. He knows that there's certain things you're not supposed to change. You're not supposed to be able to, move because that's the Saban way. That's the Alabama way. Saban doesn't want you to change those things, so you can't. So Sark knows where the line is of what Tommy Rees is going to affect in the difference of offense from when he was there to when Bill O'Brien was there to now when Tommy Rees is there. And then he talks about Kevin Steele's defense, and he was asked, he's played against Kevin Steele before, he's called plays against him before at Auburn, when he was at Auburn, and when Sark was at Alabama. But he kind of goes into this again about knowing what the Alabama defense is going to be, studying Kevin Steele. And it also shows you how much that Kevin Steele or how much Sark has been preparing for this game in the offseason, even though he won't come out and say it.
Well, I mean, in the end, I have a lot of respect for Coach Steele. Granted, and clearly I have a ton of respect for Coach Saban. And so systematically, it's not a whole lot different of, when Coach Steele left, he maintained the core structure of that defense. And so for him to be back and calling it in that structure, it's really not that different that way. As Coach Saban would always say, it's Alabama's defense, right? And they're going to do it. It was Alabama's offense when I was there too. I think that's one of the beauties and one of the hallmarks of how he's been able to sustain for so long. But a guy like me, I don't have a whole lot of hobbies, so I kind of watch a lot of tape throughout the off season and during the season, to where sometimes I don't want to say it's for fun, but it kind of is for fun. You're just watching football. I get to do what I love, and I love what I do. And I got a ton of respect for those men as coaches and the job that they've done throughout their career. So we do drill down on that kind of stuff, but we try not to chase ghosts too. At the end of the day, you can't try to get ready for everything. You got to trust your training and react to things when they come.
So he knows kind of what everything's going to be, because he knows when he was there, these are the things that are the stalwarts, and these are the things that don't change for Alabama football. We know these things are going to stay. What else can change? What can Tommy Rees bring? And that's what we have to figure out. That's the stuff where I have to watch every game that Tommy Rees has called and know his tendencies from job to job. And I have to go back and watch every game that Kevin Steele, and I have my analyst, and we're all going through and we're trying to pick any tendency that Tommy Rees and what he likes to do and what he likes to hide and what are his special plays that he only calls a little bit. And is he calling these in major games, and what he tries to do in big games, and what he tries to do against the deep ball, because we know he's going to wonder what Kevin Steele is going to do against the deep ball, because that's what he wants. And I know he says explosive plays, but we know he means the deep ball on a lot of those. But Sark has a advantage in knowing the baseline of it. Not a bunch, but the baseline in a game where you don't know the offensive coordinator, you don't know the defensive coordinator, what they're doing with Alabama, because it is their second game. They didn't show anything against Middle Tennessee State. You have a little bit of an advantage there. But you like to hear that he's been ready. And then it comes into trusting yourself at a point. That is what they didn't do against Rice. That's what Texas did not do at all against Rice. Trusting yourself to make the right plays. They did what they were told to do. They lined up and they blocked the way they were supposed to block. They ran the plays the way they were supposed to. And you didn't adjust the right way you need to. The defense did. It seemed that the defense adjusted a lot more than the offense, and we only saw one miscue on the defense, which was the one play David Benda missed, and he had a good game other than that. He just missed one play. But something that Sark is going to go on, and this is something that has been a key point from Sark since he's gotten here. It's been a phrase he likes to use. It's a phrase that they're going to use a lot this week, is playing with emotion, not emotional. And that's when you're talking about those split-second decisions and the trying to play within yourself in the games. Is you need to play with all the emotion and intensity and fire that drives you, but you can't think, I missed the last play, I have to go make it up on this play. You can't think that as an offensive lineman, because that's when you pick up a hold, or that's when you jump out of your blocks. You can't think as a defensive lineman, well, the last time the offensive lineman won, so now I need to get a better start on this, and you jump out and give him 5 yards. You can't think of a defensive back, and you grab and you get a penalty. That's when those penalties happen. That's when the mistakes work, where you worry too much and you press off and you slide in the grass because you're too amped up now. You're being emotional, not emotion, not playing with emotion. Here's Sark talking about playing with emotion, not playing emotionally.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, football's definitely a game of emotion, and especially when you're on the road, in the type of environment that we're going into, we're going to need our emotion. We're going to need everybody, sticking together and being tight on that sideline and on the field and being there for one another. That energy, that emotion is important. When you get emotional is when you start making poor choices and decisions on field. That's when late hits occur. That's when you make unforced errors that can dramatically affect the game, extend drives, things of that nature, and knock drives back. So we just want to make sure that we're right there at the cusp of having really good emotion and energy and excitement. We should be. I mean, who wouldn't want to be, but not step over that line of making emotional, irrational decisions.
And that is something that is very big because Alabama did it last year against Texas. Alabama versus Texas last year. Texas came out and was dominating the game. And Alabama played with emotion, but they did not play emotionally. They did not let it get to them and let it snowball downhill, and they weren't able to come back. They were able to play. They did not play well the whole game, but they were able to come in and finish the game off. And if you're Texas, you understand there's no we're walking away with this. There's no we're going to go in and blow out Alabama. There's a point of we have a shot to win this game, but we need to do everything as hard and as physical and as intense as we can. We need to focus as hard as we can to not have any mental mistakes. We need to focus to try and catch every little nuanced thing that this defense is going to show us, because if we let a guy come past us once, we can't let him happen again. But at the same point, when Quinn Ewers gets hit a couple times and when the pocket starts to collapse a little bit, there's plays where Quinn started to get out of his progression too soon because he started to play emotionally. He started to say, okay, I'm having more success running the ball than throwing it on some of these. When the pocket collapses, just go. You can't do that because they're going to come after you. They're going to be headhunting, and they're going to be trying to get the ball out from you. And headhunting is a little bit different than it used to be where, I know he got hurt last year, but there's extenuating circumstance. There wasn't a head-to-head shot. I don't think they're coming out to try and take him out, but they want to poke the ball out. Anytime a quarterback carries the ball, you want to try and poke the ball out. That's just how it is. That's what you want to do. So you're going to have to be able to get this team right now through a week of practice that you have to really put them through the ringer, really get them going, and then come back for Alabama. You have to get them on the plane, get them on the bus, get them in the hotel room, and get them in the right state of mind, because the O-line is going to have to step up their gameplay. You're going to have to be able to throw these intermediate game. You're going to have to be able to complete the simple passes you need to do to get the big play. And when that big play happens or doesn't happen, whatever the result of that big play, if Quinn Ewers misses that big pass like he's missed a few times this in the game one, if he misses that, you need to be able to react with, okay, let's go back. Let's go back to the game plan. Let's hit what we're doing. You need to be able to go back to that. And if he hits it and you get that big touchdown, you don't need to walk around and think that, okay, we can hit that all game long and I'm going to try and force it in next time. You have to play with emotion, but not emotional. That is what Texas is going to have to do in this game plan. Defensively, you get a big stop, you got to remember they're coming right back at you. And if Milroe isn't working and you stop him, remember that Oklahoma game where you played such good defense that you knocked Spencer Rattler out of the game, off of Oklahoma, all the way to South Carolina. And you end up losing the game because Caleb Williams comes in and has an epic performance. So you need to be able to play with that emotion and be level-headed. And you're going to have to just show a bunch of different things. We'll get more into it. Joe Cook is coming on. We'll talk a little bit more Texas versus Alabama, Texas recruitment. They got a big recruit yesterday. Texas football did. We'll talk more about that in just a minute. But let's get to Patrick's Big Fat Poll of the day.
Patrick's Big Fat Poll of the day on the Horn.
512-337-3776. 512-337-3776 is the text line where you can join in the conversation and we can answer our poll question for today. Yesterday we asked you about who is the best male athlete of all time under 5'8". We went with Lionel Messi. He wins away with it. We kind of snuck Barry Sanders in there to make it a fight, but Messi runs away with it, wins our poll for yesterday. Today, we are going to look at a little something because Travis Kelce has been ruled out for tonight. I know he is still arguing. There's still reports. I think he is telling people that he's still going to try and play. The Kansas City Chiefs do not want him to get hurt more long term. Just get him healthy. It doesn't matter. I get it's week 1, but you got to sit out. That's what they're going for, right? But I want to ask you, if you have a tight end, all-time list, tight end, which tight end do you want on the field with the game on the line? When you got to throw the ball, block, whatever you got to do, you got to get your tight end out there that you want to get it. Which tight end are you going for? And this is kind of a different list because we can't go real old school because old school tight ends aren't necessarily the guys that you want in there to make the big goal line plays. But do you go with the Rob Gronkowski? Is that the guy, or is that a Tom Brady thing? Do you go back to Shannon Sharp or Tony Gonzalez? Is it Jimmy Graham your guy? Is it Travis Kelce? Is it one of your guys now? Is it Mark Andrews? You Mark Andrews guy, someone in the league right now. You love Antonio Gates, the man from Kent State. Tell us who you got. Which all-time tight end do you want on the field with the game on the line? All-time tight end, 512-337-3776. Who's your tight end when the game's on the line? You tell me. 512-337-3776. We come back. We'll have Joe Cook from Inside Texas talking more Texas football. Playing the big game against Alabama this weekend. We got Texas football on the mind here on The Horn on the Sports Complex. 1019 AM 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com. Back in the sports complex here on the Horn. Keep those texts rolling in, 512-337-3776. Who is your all-time tight end that you want? Game on the line. Good answer so far. We'll read those coming up in a little bit. But we want to keep the ball rolling here on some Texas-Alabama talk. Keep doing Texas football. And on the phone with us right now, on the Vaqueros Cafe and Cantina hotline, Joe Cook, the managing editor of Inside Texas. You can follow him at JosephCook89 on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it. You can follow him there. But he's in to talk some Texas football. Joe, how you doing, brother?
Doing great, Patrick. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so let's start off with the big recruit from yesterday. They get Zine Umuzulu, if I'm pronouncing. I'm not sure if I'm getting that right, from Allen, Texas. 4-star edge. What does this do for Texas in recruiting to get another big recruitment on the edge?
Yeah, this is probably the weakest position on the roster on defense. If you look at it from a star perspective, from a production perspective. So to add someone like Umuzulu and pair him with someone like Colin Simmons, who's one of the top 5 players in the country, that's great news for that class. And the other thing is they fit different positions. They'll play on opposite sides of the line. So you've addressed 2 different needs with the addition of him in the class. And, of course, it's always good to do well at a big power program like Allen, and also make sure you land family members. It's not always been a guarantee with Texas in recent years, but it's nice to see Neto's little brother is going to join be joined on the roster. Neto is going to have his little brother join him on the roster. There we go. So they're still looking for a couple more defensive end edge rushers in this class. But to add Umuzulu, especially at Oklahoma and Texas A&M's expense, is a pretty nice pickup for the Longhorns.
Yeah, it is one of those things in today's game, too, where it's get as many as you can because you don't know how many are going to stay and you don't know how many are going to work out. And we know at Texas, you get enough 5 stars and 4 stars and everything else. And if you don't get the right ones and you don't work them out right, it doesn't end up doing much. But let's get into let's talk a little bit about last week before we get into Alabama. Biggest takeaway from you from week 1, and you can't say offensive line because we know it's the offensive line. But what other than the offensive line, what's your biggest takeaway from week 1?
I think the discussion over the past week about Texas football has been a big battle between, it was all vanilla, don't worry, they weren't showing anything for Rice, and oh no, it was still bad because of the offensive line and stuff like that. I think the truth is a little bit in the middle. You didn't see a lot of motion. Keelan Robinson, who is going to be a big part of this team, only had 2 total offensive touches. Like those are different aspects of Steve Sarkisian's offense that we're definitely going to see a lot more of. But despite being, plain, I guess, by Sarkisian standards, there was some lack of execution, miscommunication on the offensive line. The deep ball, of course, continues to be an area of, lack of success, I guess to say. So a little bit of both, but it's all stuff that doesn't really it's stuff that can be addressed, and it's stuff that can be addressed just by throwing more things at Alabama. You don't have to maybe shore up what they ran versus Rice, but they can throw more at Alabama and confuse them that way. But I think the same probably holds true on the other side for how the Crimson Tide treated Middle Tennessee as well.
Yeah, exactly. And it was one of those things that I like, is there any explanation for the O-line play? Because we saw what happened, and it wasn't so much, Kelvin Banks having a bad day, that happens. You don't want to see it, but it happens. But the amount of free runs at a quarterback, there's no way a coach thinks, you know what, before we play the biggest game of the year, let's hit the defense tee off on them a few times. Is there any explanation for how much they just missed free runs at the quarterback and missed guys over and over again throughout that game?
Like miscommunication. I mean, that's I think one of the big ones that you're referencing was there was supposed to be a pass off, I think, between Kelvin Banks and Hayden Connor. And that's, it's a true sophomore and a true junior, yeah. I think, or maybe a redshirt sophomore, third-year player. But that's supposed to be taken care of. It's not all on Jake Majors, but he has to make sure that communication is up to snuff. And then, I'm also looking at DJ Campbell. He had 5-star billing, but that's because he had 5-star athleticism and 5-star strength. But there was some processing of the image in front of him. That was not 5-star. And that's some of the warts you have to deal with when looking at true freshmen and also true sophomores making their first start. We'll see how Texas decides to handle that. Cole Hudson could be an option. He started all 13 games last year. But, the similar pitfalls there. And, of course, Neto Umeozulu, Zena's older brother, could be an option on the inside as well. But I'm not sure about the idea of throwing somebody out there versus Bama for their first career start or first extended action in Bryant-Denny Stadium. We'll see if they mix it up. But as far as starting goes, I'd be surprised if Connor was upended, but you may see a little bit more Cole Hudson and potentially even in the starting lineup on Saturday to try to address those O-line issues.
Yeah, and I mean, the communication is clearly one of the biggest issues, and that was a home game against Rice. It was not going to be as loud as what you're going to have going into Tuscaloosa. But the other part of this, too, the running backs, the stats look pretty good. Some of the plays looked really good with the running backs. Some of the plays didn't. But you wanted to see, I personally wanted to see a running back really step out into and be the guy. And I don't think we saw that any running back. Did any running back make their case in Sark's eyes to be the guy, to be the definite starter, that we don't have to do this dance every week? Or is it going to be by committee till further notice?
I think Sark was probably holding back a little bit. The leading rusher was Jaden Blue, and he performed really well, had 12 carries, but I'd be surprised if he was the leading rusher again this week. I thought Jonathan Brooks, you look at that drop and you have to weigh that, and that's the play that you have your running backs make. But I look at that touchdown and, making the one-man miss and then running away from the rest of the tacklers as just, those are the types of plays that you need your running backs to make. And C.J. Baxter made one too until he got hurt at the end of it. And, Sark is he says a lot of things, and sometimes he leaves things unsaid. He said he's looking forward to seeing Baxter out there and expects he's going to be available. But, until he says something like, yeah, he's playing and he's going to start, I'm going to be a little bit wary of how much we see of Baxter if he's on a pitch count. So I think you can go along with Brooks and still do well, as long as, like I mentioned, you mix up the offense some and don't make him have to do every single thing in the running game. Yeah,
and you're expecting to see Keelan Robinson a lot more than we saw him this week, right?
Yeah, absolutely. More than 2 touches, and especially for him, he's had this game circled for a while. He's ready to go back to Tuscaloosa and make a few plays on his old team.
Yeah, you could tell that one. So, all right, so let's move on to Alabama now. And what's going into it? If you had to name the biggest concern you have, I know there's plenty of concerns anytime you go into Tuscaloosa, anytime you play against a coach like Nick Saban. There's plenty to worry about. What's your biggest worry on the Texas team of something that needs to be fixed or something that you're not sure is going to show up come Saturday?
You said on the defense?
On either side, just on our side of the ball.
Oh, I got you. Well, I mean, here's a lot of players on this team were on the roster in 2021, and they went to an Arkansas Razorback stadium that was pretty vicious, not friendly in the slightest, definitely the largest stadium that they played in outside of DKR and the most hostile, and they didn't really fare very well. And Steve Sarkisian's talked about how, he didn't have that team prepared, and he believes that there's a lot more mental fortitude with this team, and I'm inclined to believe him. But, I mean, Texas doesn't play in front of 100,000, hostile fans. They play in front of 100,000 friendly fans or, 50,000 at the Cotton Bowl who are friendly and 52 who are hostile, or maybe even, 65,000 at Iowa State. But that's the biggest Big 12 stadium they go to. I'm really curious to see, despite everything we talk about with the team, the defensive tackles being a strength, Jalen Ford being good, the defensive backs being deep, wide receiver being deep, all the different stuff. This team's got to prove they can do it in front of a crowd of 100,000 who want them to fail play after play. And I think, this team, like I said, it's equipped to do it, but you got to show it. And I think everybody's waiting to see how that goes.
Yeah, that Arkansas game ruined Father's Day. Really, really not a fun one. Ruined Father's Day with me and my dad. Talking to Joe Cook, managing editor of Inside Texas. You can follow him at JosephCook89 on X. So one of the big concerns of Texas last year, a big concern basically of any defense, but especially with the mobile quarterback of Jalen Milroe for Alabama. The defense looked great against Rice, but it's Rice. What does Texas need to do to get off the field on 3rd downs and 4th downs in this game? Because it killed them last year.
They got to keep Jalen Milroe in front of them, and I think that's why you may not see a ton of man coverage, at least on third down or in those situations, because if he sees the back plate, the name plate, he's probably going to tuck and run. They just got to keep him in front of him. And I'm not saying to spy, because I think a lot of times people say, oh, just spy him every play. Well, that basically renders you 10.5 on 10. It messes with the structure of a defense. But they'll definitely have guys keeping eyes on him as they do, and you'll probably see a lot more zone coverage on third down. Still, they're going to have to try and get after him. Texas showed off some varied formations this past week on defense. They haven't really shown a lot throughout the Pete Kwiatkowski era, and that'll probably muddy the picture for a player who, of all his strengths, his weaknesses are going through progressions and seeing where to go with the football, even with pressure in his face. So it's either get after him and get him down, or keep you in front of him and hope that and force him to pick apart defenses in a way that he has not, in his short career, proven to be able to do quite yet.
Yeah, you just can't allow the blitz to get past him and not bring him down, because once you start playing that game, Jalen Milroe is going to kill you. So if Texas can do what they do on defense, you hope that the offense clicks together. But how does Texas find a way to win this game against Alabama, going against a more experienced Alabama team, at least of playing big games, and they're at home? How does Texas get a win?
I think they have to pick on some of the younger members, or maybe the second-string guys on the Alabama secondary. They've got Kool-Aid McKinstry, owner of one of the best names in college football, but still a really talented player. But some of their starters on defense, including a U.S. transfer and a couple other guys, are banged up. So there's going to be they're Alabama second stringers, but they're Texas wide receivers. It should be one of the strongest units on the team. And Texas is able to press those guys who may not be quite used to having to do that on a play-by-play basis. Now, there's a freshman for Bama, his name is and there's a tier of players, or I guess I should say a tier of player when it comes to praise that only has one name in it right now, and it's Minkah Fitzpatrick, who played for Steelers. I think he's on the Dolphins now, if I remember right. But Nick Saban would constantly praise Minkah Fitzpatrick, no matter what point in his career he was at, about being just prepared and being able to translate preparation to athleticism. And I think Caleb Downs may enter that conversation by the time he's done at Bama. A true freshman, makes a lot of plays at safety. Got to watch out for him, but you got to make life difficult for him, because the Middle Tennessee Blue Raiders are not the same. They don't have the same wide receiver core as Texas has with A.D. Mitchell, Xavier Worthy, all those different guys. So I think if Texas wins this game, it's because they let the wide receivers work in space, get the ball, and worked on a Alabama defensive backcourt that may not be at 100% already in week 2.
There you go. Talking to Joe Cook from Inside Texas. Sark loves a gadget play, loves a little, trickery, or not even trickery, but just trying to throw some different things against the wall. With all the wide receivers you have now, with the running backs like a Keelan Robinson who can get out and catch, how much do you think Sark throws different things at this Alabama defense early in the first half? And how much of it do you think he tries to hold back and not play his cards too much early? Is this a Sark, let's go full force early, or does he sit back and try and play the game out?
I think that script's going to have a lot of different things. It kind of depends on what personnel he wants to throw. I know there are a lot of fans who say, throw tempo. Well, Sark likes throwing a lot of different personnels, multiple running backs, multiple tight ends, that type of thing. That takes substitution. So I would honestly side with the idea of tempo and force Alabama to defend, 3 wide receivers on the field and Jatavian Sanders. Use other stuff as a mix-up, short yardage, things like that. But I would see how much Sark can emphasize tempo and see if that's something that may catch Alabama by surprise and force them into a defensive personnel package that may not be their best at this early juncture.
Yeah, I do like that. I do like switching up and running some tempo and trying to get up with with a team that is mostly returning a ton of starters. You may be able to get that done. So we know we got one more for you. One more question before we let you go. We know that Sark has said that this is not a statement game, that it's a benchmark game. It lets you see where you're at, but not necessarily define your season. But in reality, how much does this game affect the team, win or lose, We know, you can still make the college football playoff if you lose. Either team can. But mentally and going forward in the season, how big is this game going to weigh on these players and this team?
Well, the physical aspect is always there. I mean, Texas, the thing about going to the SEC is, you play Bama, but then you got to turn around and play someone like Auburn or Arkansas the week after. And Texas doesn't have that with Wyoming, but luckily, even if they're going to be, they're going to be physically feeling the effects of, however many straight weeks of football, if you count the Rice game, the Bama game, which counts as a little bit more than others, and then all training camp. So they're going to have to factor that in when they face a game Wyoming team next week. But as far as mentally, it'll be huge. A lot of it has to do with scheduling, because Texas is the first Power 5 non-conference opponent to go to Bryant-Denny since 2010. But teams don't beat Bama at home. Only 8 have under Saban, and it took a few national champions or Heisman winners to get it done, like Cam Newton, Joe Burrow, Johnny Manziel, those guys to have that happen. So if Texas is able to pull it off, they're going to be feeling pretty darn good about themselves. But I think the coaching staff understands, after also, looking at Wyoming after Tech lost to them, that they still have a test next week. So they'll celebrate it. I mean, any team celebrates wins, and any win against Alabama, should it happen, would be one definitely worth celebrating and telling a bunch of different high schoolers around the state and country about. But they'll recognize that it's not a conference game, and it won't be one till next year. And even though they're not on the 2024 schedule, and that doesn't affect their standing with the Big 12, which is basically the goal they've talked about most about this season. They never talked in the preseason about, like, our goal is to beat Alabama and just leave it at that. The goal of the preseason always been to win the Big 12 as they head out. Bama would be a nice feather in the cap to have as they do that, if they want to also add playoff contention. So a lot of different things going on, but they have to make sure they're ready for, the rest of the season, both mentally and physically, no matter what happens on Saturday.
There you go. Joe Cook there, managing editor of Inside Texas, at Joseph Cook 89. Give him a follow. He is a very good follow if you want to follow what's happening with Texas football. Joe, thanks so much for joining us today.
Absolutely, Patrick. Let's do this more.
Yes, we'll have you back on soon. Talk more. Hopefully celebrating an Alabama win over Alabama next week. We'll be doing that. Thanks, Joe. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we will be answering your text. 512-337-3776. Which tight end, because Travis Kelce is out tonight. No tight end for Patrick Mahomes. But what tight end would you want all time on the field with the game on the line? Got some good answers already. 512-337-3776. We'll hit that up when we come back here on the Sports Complex in the Horn, 1019 AM 1260, the Horn app, and at hornfm.com. Back on here on the Sports Complex on the Horn, playing working songs on Labor Day week. I know we're getting further away from it, but we only got a couple songs left. On Friday, it'll be 512 Friday. But keeping the working songs going, working hard for it. We asked you on the text line, 512-337-3776. In honor of Travis Kelce now being out, we thought he may be trying to force it. Apparently, he was trying to convince players and management and everybody he could still play. He wasn't able to convince them enough. He is no longer going to be playing, but we wanted to ask you, if you had an all-time tight end, any time tight end in their prime, who do you want on the field with the game on the line? I don't think anyone has taken Kelce yet, by the way. He's dominated, been the best tight end in football for the last 3 or 4 years, 5 years. Nobody has taken Kelce. We get a Gronkowski in here, a couple Jay Novaceks. You know, showing your age. Jay Novacek, another Jay Novacek in here. Oh, Aaron Hernandez. No. Kellen Winslow, not junior. Good, the solid, it's a very necessary amendum there. Give me Jason Witten on the goal line. I always love the phrase Jason Witten gets tackled like an old man going into a warm bath. It is. I don't know how you can choose how slow you get tackled, but Jason Witten did it in an amazing way. Vernon Davis and Jay Novacek. I saw Vernon Davis. I was lucky enough to be at Mark Henry's big charity event that happened a few months back, and Vernon Davis was there and still looks amazing. Still in amazing shape. Just a beast. So Vernon Davis, yeah, he was. And then he had the whole thing with Mike Singletary that was really interesting, with the whole, Mike Singletary kicking him off the team basically and getting mad at him. We get another Jason Witten in there. Tony Gonzalez. You got to get Gonzalez in there. Gronkowski, Witten, Kelce. Any QB would know how to make those work. Hands down, my man is Jason Witten. Homer, Jermichael Finley, and Dave Thomas. I like it. I was waiting for someone to bring up a Texas tight end. I appreciate you, Chan, for bringing it up. Another Novacek. Novacek's running away with this right now. I don't feel if I put the poll out, Novacek's going to win it, though. I don't know if he's the guy, but you know what? I'm going to have to put him on the poll. You guys decide this, so I'm going to have to put him on our poll because you guys are saying it in force that Novacek is a guy. And we do have Gronk is the best tight end of all time. No question from me. People getting a little upset. We get Todd Christensen from a Raiders fan. And Greg Olsen was another good one. Greg Olsen was really, I don't know if he ever was the top tight end in the league, though. And I feel like if you're going to be on this, you got to be the top tight end. Jason Witten might have been there for a couple years. But yeah, Jay Novacek right at the beginning of when tight ends were coming out and being those guys. I love that. I love the lines there. 512-337-3776 is a text line to join the conversation. We'll keep reading those off. Which tight end all time would you want in on your fourth and goal? You're got to have it. Your end of game. This is the play. Who do you want to put in on that? We got to take a break. We come back, we'll get into some NFL. We'll get you ready for the NFL game tonight, Chiefs and Lions. We'll preview that a little bit, give you our pick in that one, and also some predictions. So go ahead, send in your picks for tonight's game. Send in your predictions. Who you think's going to the Super Bowl? Who you got there? Send those in on the text line as well, 512-337-3776. We'll read some more of that as we get into the next hour here on the Sports Complex in the Horn 104.9, 101.9, AM 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com. Back on the Sports Complex here on the Horn, hour 2 on a Thursday. We got the full show today. No Rangers game. They're recovering. The Astros are icing down them bad hands. The Rangers are recovering after a crazy series in Arlington. Astros now take the lead in the AL West. The Mariners game should have just started. We'll give you an update on that before we get off the air. The Mariners are taking on the Tampa Bay Rays right now. That is a big series for both Rangers and Astros fans to watch. Also, Blue Jays, you want to be watching that if you're a Rangers fan, trying to get back in that playoff picture. I know a lot of Rangers fans are ready for football season, is what I'm hearing. We're going to talk some NFL. We may get back to some Texas-Alabama talk as well, and more of your text. 512-337-3776. 512-337-3776 is where you can text in. Join the party here on the Sports Complex. Let's talk Chiefs and Lions. Big game tonight. The line is moved now to 4.5. We thought that Kelce was going to be out. Vegas usually is pretty good about these things. They moved the line when we saw that Kelce was probably going to be out with the injury, or at least going to be hampered. You don't want to get – the team is making probably the right decision, as much as you love to have him out there, especially, while you're trying to build up Sky Moore and build a relationship with Valdez-Scantling and build a relationship with Kadarius Toney, who is off the injury report right now. While you're trying to build up with that, Pacheco is coming off his own injury for the Chiefs. You may want to have him in there because he's the one guy that Patrick Mahomes really has the chemistry with. But he's going to be out for the day, for the game. You got to get him healthy for the long run of the season. You're trying to play for another Super Bowl, so it's going to be a long season for Chiefs fans. The Lions trying to come back, trying to get into the playoffs. They know Aaron Rodgers is not there anymore. They feel that this is their division to win now. People are not as up on Minnesota. We'll get into our predictions in a little bit of that. But this is a big game for the Lions to set precedent, start it going, take out the defending champs, move ahead. But a big thing for this is going to be, can the Lions start to play some defense, or is Patrick Mahomes going to pick them apart like he continues to do? They added Cam Sutton. They added C.J. Gardner-Johnson. They drafted Brian Branch in the secondary. They made a lot of additions to this secondary. We know Aiden Hutchinson's coming into his second year with them now, trying to get the pass rush. You're going to have to get a little bit of pressure onto Patrick Mahomes, and he's a very hard guy to pressure because he just gets the ball out and he's able to handle it. But you're going to have to try and you want to play guys close up, because this Chiefs team, they used to be able to kill you over the top. And that was all they did, was they kill you over the top, and Tyreek Hill. And then if Kelce could get out, and they were all big plays. And once people started to adjust to that, they started to go underneath, and Patrick Mahomes became the guy that gets you underneath. So you're going to try and make them throw over the top again, because you're hoping that that's a lower percentage connection now with Sky Moore and with Valdez-Scantling and Kadarius Toney. You don't want to trust those guys. So you're going to be hoping for that if you're Detroit. But this is a Detroit defense you need to see happen. And we know that Kansas City doesn't have a defense. We know that Kansas City's defense is hurting too. Chris Jones holding out, not going to be there. They get Charles Omenihu. He's suspended. Not going to be there. Former Longhorn Charles Omenihu, not going to be there. And Udoka, I can get there. Uzoma from Kansas State, their first-round pick. He's listed on the backup on the depth chart. So he's not going to be coming in, did not have the camp to come in and make a huge impact to get up there and be a star player for the Chiefs right away. Are they going to be able to stop this Detroit Lions team that looked really good last year? Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator for the Lions, looked amazing. Looked like he had this team running. Jared Goff, he makes Jared Goff look good again after we saw Jared Goff be found out and be called a bust, and now he's about to go get another big contract because what they're doing in Detroit with him. You get Jahmyr Gibbs, and what you hear about Jahmyr Gibbs is that even if Montgomery comes in these games, that you're going to be able to have Jahmyr Gibbs line up as a wide receiver. Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be in there playing big minutes and trying to get, there's just so much explosive abilities. Amon-Ra St. Brown, what he's going to be able to do in another year now that he's really starting to feel his own oats and starting to be that guy. This could be a high-scoring team, and I'll tell you, this could be a high-scoring game. And I know Thursday night games in general, and especially once we get into the Amazon Thursday night games, and those Thursday night games later in the season, they suck. They just suck a lot. They're very rarely good. Even good matchups are usually low-scoring, and the teams aren't ready. That is not necessarily the case for the opening game, Thursday night game. And if you look back, there are some, slower games. There's some that don't, that were not as fun, but a lot of times those are defensive matchups anyway. They weren't probably going to be the best. You maybe had an injury coming out there. Kansas City in the Andy Reid era has started the season on a Thursday night game, kicked off the season twice. 2020 and 2017, they've done it. So every 3 years, Kansas City gets put in that because they're in their 2023 now. 2020 score, they win 34-20 over Houston. That is a Houston team that wasn't very good. Kansas City puts up 34. 2017, they beat a defending champion New England Patriots, who then goes on to be in the Super Bowl and lose to the Eagles that year. They beat them 42-27 in 2017. That's in the Alex Smith era. That's when Patrick Mahomes is on the bench, already been drafted but isn't playing, getting a year behind. They're able to do that. So they put up 34 and 42 in the first game of the season. So this is the Thursday night kickoff game that we normally don't, that is not always great. That first Thursday, week 1 Thursday game. And it is going to be, I don't think it's going to be the low-scoring affair that we normally see on a regular Thursday night. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I do like the lines to cover, though. I like the lines to cover. I think that I don't know if they win this game outright. I still think the Chiefs find a way to win it, but I think it's within a field goal. It's a 4.5-point line right now. I have the Lions covering on this. I may, if you wanted to go press me, I'd probably say the Chiefs win the game, the Lions cover, which is not giving me a large margin. But that's what I'd say. Tell me your text. Tell me what you think. 512-337-3776 is the text line. 512-337-3776. Let us know that. And we get last year was the first year that the Thursday night games were actually good. They weren't really good. The matchups were better because it was Amazon, and so they tried to give them better matchups. But some of the games were still not great in the offense because it's a short week. That's the normal deal. Is a Thursday night game is usually not great because it's a short week. You don't get the prep in, so you're basically, there's nothing really game plan for that team that you're playing. You're kind of just going out and doing your thing. So you don't get gadget plays. You don't get to draw up an offense that's necessarily going to take apart that defense. And again, neither of these defenses may need that. We don't know what this Lions defense is going to look like. That's one of the things you're going to be watching the most. That Jahmyr Gibbs. I think you're watching two things on the Lions. And we're going to see who the wide receiver is that steps up for Kansas City. You're forcing the hand now. They got Valdez-Scantling last year. That was the one they hoped was going to be there. He never really took over that role. He did okay, but he's never the guy. And there's never, the number 2 wide receiver in Kansas City has never been anything. Before Travis Kelce, before, with Tyreek Hill, the number 2 wide receiver is not anything. But you need at least to have a number 1. And is Sky Moore going to be able to step up into that role this year? Is Kadarius Toney finally going to be healthy, not be a head case, go in there and do his role? Kadarius Toney has all the potential, all the talent. We've seen it. Does he have the consistency? I got the Lions covering. What do you got? 512-337-3776. And I'll take the over. I think there's going to be a high-scoring game. I think that, you're going to see some fireworks. You're going to see some big plays especially for the Lions. And then Patrick Mahomes, you can't count him out. He's one of the best second-half quarterbacks and comeback quarterbacks ever. I still know as a Texans fan that game when celebrating in the first quarter because the Texans are up by 30-something points. And it's over before halftime. Kansas City's already come back. Let's do some NFL predictions. Let's get into the season. Get some predictions out. I'm going to predict. We'll get into go division by division for you. If you've got any big predictions, any big takes that you want to put out in the text line, 512-337-3776. Let's start off in the AFC, and we'll start out the AFC with the division that is probably the easiest to call. We'll start off with the AFC South. And we all know this is Jacksonville's division to lose. They are the team far and ahead, the most ready to go. You have that running back, the wide receiver core that messed up the entire wide receiver market by paying Christian Kirk all that money. But he plays has a good season last year. Zay Jones has a good season last year. Then you add Calvin Ridley back into this mix. It's going to take him a little while. I don't think you just bust that rust off in offseason. So you're going to have to, give him a little bit of time. Evan Ingram, has been a disappointment at points, but we know he has a potential. There's so many weapons. Travis Etienne, and then you throw in Trevor Lawrence. There's so many weapons on this offense. Doug Peterson's a great coach. The defense is building back up there in Jacksonville. And who is competing against them? Tennessee, not worried about it. They've drafted quarterbacks the last 2 years to try and replace Ryan Tannehill, and Ryan Tannehill's still the guy. Houston, that O-line, all the draft picks and everything they said, they can't get it healthy. Can't get that O-line healthy, and if CJ Stroud doesn't have a pocket, I'm not thrilled about his outcomes of games. He is a guy that you could tell when his back foot is planted and he's got time, he's really good, and when he doesn't, he's not as good. And so we could see some panic and some interceptions. I don't have a lot of hope for Houston, but I got them third. I'm going to put Indy last. I know Anthony Richardson maybe we'll show everybody up, but I have Indy getting up last in this division. The Jonathan Taylor holdout is going to be a big problem. Michael Pittman Jr., I hope he steps up this year. Did not do it at all last year. I don't know if this team is going to be ready to go. I like Shane Steichen as a coach, but as a first-year head coach taking over with all these problems with an owner who is going to continue to stick his hand in the pot. We saw him last year. He put Sam Ehlinger out there when, Frank Reich didn't want that. There's just a lot going on there. AFC West. Kansas City you have to pick Kansas City. Until Kansas City lose, you have to take them. Last year, I know it was a much more divided division. Denver looked like they had a shot to do it when they get the Russell Wilson trade. Las Vegas looks like they're going to try and go up for it. The Chargers are always right there. I got the Chargers second. I got Kansas City taking that division. The Chargers I got going in second place. I think they're going to look pretty good with Kellen Moore. I'm worried about when they get to the playoffs, but you still have Austin Eckler. And, if you're able to keep him in the offseason, that team's going to continue to be good. You got a lot of wide receivers. I love the Quentin Johnson pickup because Kellen Moore loves his third wide receiver. He has made, Cedric Alexander a bunch of money. He made Michael Gallup a bunch of money. So I think that Quentin Johnson's going to have a great year in L.A. as well. Justin Herbert getting his big contract, going to come out. I know some people are a little bit worried about it. I don't think his defense is going to be great. You're going to be throwing the ball a ton. You're going to be trying to run little gadget plays, stuff like that. I think they do well, but Kansas City's still the team to beat. We'll see tonight who the wide receiver is for Kansas City, who's going to take over that role, but I got Kansas City winning the AFC East. AFC North. Cincinnati this is one of the toughest divisions to call. I got Cincinnati. Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase. Now, this is a team that I don't know next year. Once the contracts have to be divvied out, if they're not able to keep T. Higgins, if they're, you got to pay Jamar Chase, you got to pay Joe Burrow, that's going to be a lot of money. How does your O-line continue to build? How does your defense continue to build? Lou Anarumo is a great defensive coach, but does he want to get out of there at some point and go somewhere else if you focus completely and put all the money in the offense? Are the Bengals a notoriously cheap franchise going to keep spending the money? Right now, they're okay. Right now, you're doing pretty good. And you're looking like this is a season that I think that the Cincinnati can come in. I don't know if they're good enough to beat the Chiefs. It's going to take all season to get to. But I know that they can win this division. Baltimore is going to make an improvement, but a first year in an offensive coordinator, I don't feel that Lamar Jackson, even though with all the pieces, I think he's going to need another year to really learn the offense and get it down, to get the protections, get all the check downs and all that right. And then Cleveland and Pittsburgh. Who do you put, Cleveland or Pittsburgh? I have to put Pittsburgh ahead of Cleveland because Mike Tomlin. He's just a better coach than Stefanski is. He just is. Mike Tomlin's just a great coach. Kenny Pickett to George Pickens is going to win you a lot of games. And I think that's one of those things you see in Pittsburgh is they win the games they're supposed to win. Now, can they win the games they're not? Can they have upsets? I don't know if this team's good enough to do that a lot. But I know they are good enough to win the games they're supposed to win. And so I have Pittsburgh ahead of Cleveland in that. Cincinnati, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Cleveland in the AFC North. AFC. Buffalo. It's who I got winning the AFC East. Now, this is one of the toughest divisions. Buffalo, Jets, Miami, New England. 3 of those teams have put a lot into this offseason. Miami, I don't feel was able to get enough done. They kept trying to add pieces. They kept trying to get guys in. They were in the Jonathan Taylor talks. They were in basically every running back talks they're in. They wanted to sign Dalvin Cook as well. They weren't able to get that done. I think Mike McDaniel is one of my favorite coaches in the NFL. I think he really wants to run the ball more and take a little bit of the load off of Tua. But with the Tua health, I can't trust him to be healthy. Him and Waddle, when they're playing great, feel good. They lose Gesicki to New England as well. He was not able to be healthy. The health in Miami is the problem. I don't know if they're going to be able to get it done. The Jets are going to improve. Aaron Rodgers just doesn't lose. He's going to be in there. I think the Jets win in the playoffs. I think Buffalo wins in the regular season. They've got the years, but I do see a bit of a regression in Buffalo as well. This may be the last year of Sean McDermott in Buffalo. It's at a point you have to change it up, and you're not going to give up Josh Allen. So if you're not going to give up your quarterback, you got to change something up, and it may be your coach, Sean McDermott. He's a good coach, but he can't get you over that hump, and you may have missed your window in the AFC. If Kansas City is where they're at, Cincinnati's where they're at. If Jacksonville starts to push you, if the Chargers start to push you, if Baltimore starts to push you, if the Jets start to push you, and you start to fall down to 7th or 8th in the AFC, what are you going to do? That may be time to make a change. And we saw how much Brian Daboll did, what he's doing in New York, what he's doing with Daniel Jones. Let's go over to the NFC. Get some predictions over there before we get to our break. NFC South, the worst division again. We started with the AFC South, the NFC South. The South not going to rise again this year, guys. I do not feel the South will rise again in the NFL. I have New Orleans winning this division just because they've had more veteran presence. If Michael Thomas can come back and play at a high level or play at a decent level along Chris Olave, Derek Carr is going to be able to get him. He's been able to do well enough in the regular season. He hasn't had a lot of postseason experience, but I think that he'll be okay to get you through this division. Atlanta's going to have its growing pains. I like what Atlanta has with a lot of weapons. I don't know about their defense. I really don't know about Desmond Ridder at quarterback. Desmond Ridder comes out and is 10 times better than he was last year. They got a shot to win the NFC South. But that's saying he's 10 times better than he was last year because he was not a good quarterback last year. They're just going to run the ball. And Desmond Ridder is going to run the ball. And Bijan's going to run the ball. And Algier's going to run the ball. And everyone's going to run the ball in Atlanta. Carolina got going 3rd and Tampa Bay 4th. Tampa Bay, it needs to shut it down. I get it. Just go into try and tank. I'm not a big fan of tanking, but come on, guys. You had the run. You got to get some of these older contracts. Mike Evans, I don't think he wants to be there anymore. He doesn't want to work with the new quarterback. But if you want to keep Mike Evans, then get a top quarterback in the draft, and maybe he'll stick around for their progression. But if you keep trying to stick out Kyle Trask and Baker Mayfield and you don't get one of those top picks, it's going to be a long recovery road. If you just edge into the middle of the NFC, I think they go ahead and just take it all off. NFC North. Big one. Green Bay trying to recover after losing Aaron Rodgers. Jordan Love, what does he do? Chicago. Justin Fields looked really good at the end of the year, but we know that he has limitations. They got a great running game there. Add DJ Moore. Minnesota was the front runner after Aaron Rodgers leaves. Kirk Cousins up there, Justin Jefferson, and the Detroit Lions. We just talked about them playing the big game tonight. Detroit is who I have winning this division. I think this Detroit team figures out some of their problems on defense. I think they figure out a lot of their problems on offense. I love the Jahmyr Gibbs pick. I know it was too early. I know it's too much to pay a running back. I get all of that, but I love the Jahmyr Gibbs pick. I think they're going to do a lot of good things in Detroit. Minnesota, I see a regression happening. I just can't buy into this team continuing to work out. Jordan Addison is a good wide receiver, but I feel the same way as when he went to USC. I don't know if he's that transcendent wide receiver, and I don't know if they're going to pay Justin Jefferson after you paid Hawkinson. I talked about this the other day. There may be a point where they decide they don't have the money and Minnesota doesn't want to spend the money to keep the best wide receiver in football. That seems silly. They traded Stephon Diggs away. If you can get a good enough package for him instead of paying him and make him the highest paid wide receiver after Jamar Chase gets his money with Joe Burrow, you may move on, and this may be a team that goes into rebuilding before too long. And, they've tried to move on from Kirk Cousins before. This may be the time. NFC West. San Francisco is the team to beat. They get the Nick Bosa deal done. It's not hard. They've been there. Can they? The San Francisco question is, can they get over the hump? Can they make it to the Super Bowl? Can they win a Super Bowl? Can Kyle Shanahan finish the run? We know he was up in a Super Bowl as offensive coordinator and couldn't finish it. We know that's not just his fault, but can he get back there? Can they stay healthy? The Brock Purdy era is officially alive in San Francisco. The Sam Darnold era hopefully does not appear in San Francisco. Seattle's I got second. I like what Seattle is doing. They did really good in the draft. Pete Carroll's a hell of a coach. They'll be all right. The Rams, if Cooper Kupp doesn't play, this team, I don't know what they can do. I'm not bought into them being more than a middle-of-the-road team with the construction of this roster right now. And I know Cooper Kupp is good. I just, maybe last year, maybe it's recency bias, but I don't have a lot of faith in this team. And we know Arizona's tanking. We don't even have to say it. We know Arizona's tanking. That's why they cut Colt McCoy. That's why they're going to put Kyler Murray out for as long as they possibly can and then try and trade him. But Caleb Williams has already said that he may not even come out if Arizona's got the number 1 pick. He may not even want to go play in Arizona because of how bad of a franchise and how much people hate it that play there. And no player development whatsoever. And finally, we'll go to the NFC East. The one all you Cowboys fans have been waiting for. The NFC East. Let's start at the bottom. I got Washington. Look, the Washington and the Giants are kind of a toss-up, but I'm going to go with the coach I like more. I like Brian Daboll more than I like Ron Rivera. Ron Rivera's a good guy. It's time for a change there. They just need to move on. I like Eric Bieniemy as well, but it's time for a change. I just don't see it working. I don't see it working. I hope for Eric Bieniemy it does. I hope for Ron Rivera it does, but I don't think it's working. And I got Philadelphia edging out Dallas. They don't seem any worse than they do last year, right? I know teams don't win it back-to-back, but Dallas seems like they have other holes on the offense. The offense doesn't – I love the Brandon Cooks signing, but you don't have a tight end now. You're trying out with Ferguson. The running game is a major question mark. The offensive line looks good, but, it seems also like it's kind of on eggshells at this point. And I have no faith in Mike McCarthy calling plays. I do think it's close. I think Dallas has got a shot, and anything can happen in the NFL, but I got Philadelphia winning there. We're going to take another break. When we come back, we'll give some more picks. We'll give your picks too. 512-337-3776. If you have playoff picks, AFC, NFC champions, who you got in the Super Bowl and who you got winning, send those in. 512-337-3776. We'll lock them in. We'll all lock in our Super Bowl picks. We'll get those going in. As we've already got our division winners, we will lock in our AFC and NFC champs. We will lock in our Super Bowl champs, and we will listen to an interview from me and Rob B this morning from Travis Reier from Alabama, talking some more Texas football and Alabama football coming up here on the Sports Complex on the Horn, 1019, 1019, AM 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com. Back in the Sports Complex, wrapping up all of our working songs this week. You got to play Working for the Weekend if you're playing working songs all week. We're going to get to everyone's text and our Super Bowl predictions, 512-337-3776, where you can send that in. We're going to get to that in a minute, but I want to get back to some Texas, Alabama. We had Travis Reier from Alabama, covering Alabama, on E and Rod B. Hook him up with E and Rod B this morning, 6 to 11 weekday mornings right here on the Horn. He gives you a little bit more insight in what to look for and what this game means for Texas and Alabama. Here's a clip from this morning talking to Travis Reier on E and Rod B.
Can we go to the Vaqueros hotline and get some in-depth conversation about the Alabama Crimson Tide with someone who knows his stuff? He is from BamaOnline.com. He's been covering the Tide since 2003 and is covering them to this day. He is Travis Reier. He's on Twitter at Travis Reier. Travis is his first name, last name R-E-I-E-R. Travis Reier is with us. Travis, how are you?
I'm great. How are you guys this morning?
We're doing good, man. We're doing good. Hey, Rod, what's your biggest question for Alabama and Texas in this game you have for Travis right here?
Really, it's about Jalen Milroe, Travis. How do you think that Alabama's going to use Jalen Milroe in the quarterback run game, and even in the pass game? What do you think they're trying to weaponize him in what fashion?
Yeah, I think we're certainly going to see more of Jalen in design quarterback run situations than we did in the opener against Middle Tennessee. I think he carried 7 times in that game. He was sacked on 2 of those. And just 2 others were really runs that you could look at and say, yeah, the quarterback was in mind in that situation. One was on a touchdown run off a zone read, and then the other off a quarterback sneak from under center. So, Tommy Rees's background as an offensive coordinator previously at Notre Dame, ironically enough, where he most recently worked with Tyler Buckner, Alabama's backup quarterback these days, tells us that there's more in the bag from that perspective, and not just, again, in terms of the zone read game, but quarterback counters, quarterback powers. He's not afraid to expose the quarterback to those situations in the run game, and he should do that with Jalen. And I think he's going to need to, because I think this Texas defense, if you just want to try to line up and hand the ball to running backs, it's going to be tough. It was a year ago for Alabama.
Yeah, and that was Jahmyr Gibbs, who's now playing for the Detroit Lions, was one of those main running backs, had some big plays in that game, and no Bryce Young. Now it's Jalen Milroe. Travis, as we mentioned, you covered this team for a long time. You covered it for the entirety of the Nick Saban era, which has been dynastic. Where does this team for you stack up versus some of the other Alabama teams you covered?
Yeah, to be determined. I think talent-wise, in terms of just the roster, you can look at it and say, yeah, this is one of those teams. But I think there are still some questions to be answered. Here recently, it's involved more of the secondary depth, which a couple weeks ago I would have told you I thought was going to be a strength for this team and this defense, even with 3 safeties moving on to the National Football League from last year's group. But they've had some injuries of late, had a couple of guys in Jalen Key and Malachi Moore get dinged up in the opener against MTSU. They were already down a safety, so that's obviously one of the big storylines this week, especially with the skill talent that Texas is going to put in front of them. And I think Alabama at the corners with Terrion Arnold and Kool-Aid McKinstry and also a transfer that they brought in Trey Amos from Louisiana can hold up pretty good. But again, the availability of a couple of key guys, both at safety and where their sub packages are concerned, is where you're a little bit worried for this Alabama defense right now. Offensively, it was great to see Jalen have the success he had, especially in the pass game against MTSU. But I think if we're being honest, I think a lot of people out there are saying, okay, let's see him do it against a defense like Texas, because he really had his ups and downs against A&M last season in the start against a legitimate Power 5 group. So there's still some blanks that need to be filled in for this team.
Travis, what are your thoughts about the wide receiving core? In years recently, we've seen the Alabama wide receiving core just littered with NFL first-round caliber talent. We know they got some great players in their wide receiving group, but who are the guys that Texas fans should be concerned about who may be highlighted and featured on that game on Saturday?
Yeah, a lot of the same guys that they saw in last year's game, and it wasn't the best of performances for Alabama's receivers in that one. Jermaine Burton is back. Ja'Cory Brooks is back. They've added some pieces there as well. Malik Benson coming in from the junior college ranks. Jalen Hale is a Texan, as a true freshman, that they are very high on. And if you ask me about potential first-round guys, he might be at the top of my list. Now, he's still a few years down the road, but just in terms of big picture viability as a pro, he might be that guy. So, they feel really good about their inside receivers. Isaiah Bond, Kobe Prentice. Prentice had 4 catches against Texas last year. So there's a lot of depth, a lot of returning depth. But they got a lot to prove, too. I know a lot of this is being put on Jalen Milroe, but the receivers have to be better than they were a year ago. They were good in the opener against Middle Tennessee. But, again, this is a sort of show-me game for that position on this team.
Yeah, you got Jace McClellan, the Texan, at running back. There's another one in Jam Miller, the sophomore, is a Texan. A lot of Lone Star talent on this Alabama roster that will host the Longhorns. As we said, only the first matchup in Tuscaloosa between these two since 1902. Pretty incredible. So the defense, it's always a Nick Saban staple. The defensive line, we know the linebackers and Chris Braswell is back. Dallas Turner is back. Those guys can wreak havoc. Who are the guys up front? Because the Texas offensive line struggled last week a little bit with Rice, some confusion. Who are the war daddies up front for Nick Saban this year on the front?
Yeah, they're still trying to identify those guys. I mean, they like Jaheim Otis, a sophomore, who has proven to be versatile because they've been able to play him more at end so far this season, which has allowed for Tim Keenan to emerge in that defensive front. So they've got capable guys. Do they have dudes? We're still waiting to see on that one. Now, on the edges, you really like what they have at the outside linebacker position with Dallas Turner and Chris Braswell. Even Q Robinson is a third guy. Did some nice things last week against MTSU. So I would expect more so, if pressure's going to come from this Alabama front seven on Saturday night to Quinn Ewers, it'll probably be more from the linebacker level, because I think both these defenses are going to work those A gaps with some of these linebackers, because pass protection where the running backs are concerned too, something that's going to be under the microscope. And up front, I think Alabama feels good about, just in early downs and run situations, that they've got guys that can get the job done. But as far as dynamic playmaker types like Quinnen Williams, like Deron Payne and some of those guys, still kind of waiting for those to emerge.
Hey, Travis, what about the the assimilation of the coordinators with Nick Saban? We know he's had a lot of turnover there because he's had a lot of success, and teams are trying to poach his coaches all the time. He's got 2 new coordinators. Talk about the new systems they're bringing in and what they look like offensively and defensively.
Plenty of familiarity where Kevin Steele is concerned. This is his 3rd stint with Nick in Tuscaloosa. So, that's been pretty seamless, I think. And I think there's been so much emphasis on back to basics, fundamentals, things that Alabama really didn't handle with aplomb last season, including the game in Austin, where so many penalties for that Alabama defense, even with the experience they brought back. So they've worked hard on cleaning that up. I think offensively, Tommy Rees and kind of his background meshes well with where Nick saw this offense going in the post-Bryce Young era, with the change at quarterback and kind of looking at the potential strengths for this offense in comparison to the last few years. I think Tommy is matched up well from that standpoint. And, as a quarterback's coach, he's got a lot on his plate. He walked into a 3-man race, and he essentially added to it, I guess, with Tyler Buckner as the third. But, that's a big part of this, too, continued growth for 5 scholarship quarterbacks, which they're carrying right now.
Talking to Travis Reier with On3 Sports, BamaOnline.com. He's covered this program for a long, long time, 20 years now. What do you say to because you have seen the program so close, the rise and now where they are. After last year's 2-loss season, both came on the road, both came on the last play of the game. There were also a couple of close wins against Texas and Texas A&M and some others. Some are saying that Alabama's sliding back a little bit. Are you in that camp, or do you feel like that's overblown?
Yeah, I'm not ready to go there yet. This is a week of narratives, right? This is the narrative. If Texas is back, we're gonna truly find out on Saturday night. And conversely, if Texas is back, what does that mean for the narrative that maybe Alabama is in descent under Nick Saban relative to the impossible standard
Sure.
anyway that he has established, not relative really to anyone else in college football. But no, I think those are the things that are make this week intriguing too. Is that, you know, some questions, or at least some partial answers to some questions, should be revealed. And again, I don't see it in terms of the talent that is being acquired by Alabama on an annual basis. But at the end of the day, it is relative to that standard that he has established. 10-2 is 11-2 is essentially a failure, a missed opportunity on the college football playoffs. So that's the way the program is judged these days. And to be honest with you, I don't think Nick would have it any other way.
Don't disagree at all. How about the chess match, Travis? I mean, that's Sark v. Saban. I mean, they're familiar with one another, obviously. Neither showed very much on either side of the ball last week. How do you – and last year in this game here in Austin, felt like Sark had some things going early before Quinn Ewers got hurt. How do you see the chess match between the two head coaches?
Yeah, guys like Sark and Lane Kiffin, they always have hellacious scripts. Usually those first 15 or 20 plays, your defense is just trying to survive the script. And so I'm sure the Alabama defensive staff is expecting just a little bit of everything potentially, again, from a Texas offense that has the personnel to pretty much carry out whatever Sark wants to do or attempt to do anyway. So, that's why the opening 8-10 minutes of this game will be so intriguing to watch, because again, the potential that Sark has and that personnel group that he has to do some explosive things early. I think it's on Ewers to show he can connect in the deep passing game, and his receivers, they got to finish plays for him too. But that's the thing that I think, if Alabama can get through that first 8 to 10 minutes defensively and kind of get its feet under it behind that home crowd, I'm expecting a grinder anyway, kind of similar to last year's game. I'm not seeing this game in the 30s by any means. And so that's where, that's where the talent should take over at some point. And, kind of the styles of play offensively are going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, Travis, I happen to think, I don't think any team's going to be able to run the ball with the traditional run game because of how stout the defensive fronts are. Is that what you're feeling when you're talking about this thing kind of being a struggle for both teams offensively a little bit?
Yeah, for Alabama, I don't think it has a choice but to get Jalen Milroe more involved in the design run game. So, I'm not thinking he's going to carry it 20 times, but I think he'll be 10 or more as far as running the football, because I think you hit on it. Creativity, and Sark's good at that too. I mean, You saw the throwback screen for the touchdown last week. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the run game, but how you utilize your backs, scrimmage yards, things like that for the backs, both as receivers and runners. And also, of course, you got a couple tight ends in this game that you saw last week, can both really rip the seam between Amari Niblack for Alabama and then Jatavian Sanders for Texas. So there is just a lot to cover, and it's not just the run game, but yeah, I'm with you. I think the yards are going to be hard between the tackles.
Last thing for me, Travis Reier, the quarterback matchup. Obviously, Quinn Ewers, we know he's been good, but also struggles against exotic coverages. And then Jalen Milroe, for our audience, when you saw him last year in there for Bryce Young when he was hurt, we know he can run it. We know what type of athlete he is. What gave him troubles last year when he had his moments behind Bryce? I
think it was just uncertainty, and perhaps the magnitude of the situation got him a little bit, because the week before, as difficult as it is to come off the bench early in a game and be thrust into action, I think maybe for some guys it's beneficial to them that they just are thrown in there. They don't have time to really consider everything. It's more reactionary. But you go from that to a week lead up of you pretty much know you're the starter and everything that goes with that. I think there was some anxiety for Jalen. And so, that'll be a part of this too. Even with MTSU last week, what I wanted to see from Jalen was poise and composure and how he sort of managed things early in the game. And he did a great job of it. Different deal for a guy from Texas going against the team he was previously committed to. So that's something else early in the game I think you keep an eye on for Alabama is, is Jalen within himself? Does he manage things efficiently? Does he not try to, hit the home run on every snap? Because that's where the turnovers can come from. And so take care of the football, run the offense efficiently. I think Tommy Rees, as we saw last week, is going to try to help him as far as pre-snap and getting plays in early, getting them up to the line of scrimmage earlier in the play clock. The checks are going to come from the sideline with Tommy up in the box. So that's sort of the process that they're working with Jalen right now. And I think at least in week one, it was beneficial to him.
Travis, great stuff, man. That's awesome. That's just the preview we wanted for our audience. Getting ready for this game, as good as a look as we'll get at the Crimson Tide from that side. Thank you, Travis, so much. You can follow Travis on Twitter at Travis Reier, R-E-I-E-R. Easy to find and a great follow. Thank you, my friend.
Thanks, guys.
All right, there you
Thanks,
go.
Travis.
There you go. Travis Reier, a good look at the other side of the ball and what is coming up Saturday for Texas and its big game on Saturday. What means so much. We got to take one more break before we get out of here. We'll get into last call. We'll read any more of your texts, 512-337-3776. We'll get you ready for some NFL tonight. Season's kicking off. Ready to go right here on the Horn, 1019 AM 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com. Back on the Sports Complex, wrapping things up here. It's time for last call here on the Sports Complex. If you got anybody check out live around town this weekend, this night, always send those in to me, 512-337-3776, or on Twitter or X, whatever you call it, at It's Patrick Davis, or on Instagram. I'm on there as well, at It's Patrick Davis. We can shout out, though. Pearl Z is going to be at Chess Club tonight. W.C. Clark at Antone's. You can check that out. Also, Mariners and Rays playing right now. Big game for the Rangers and Astros. Means a lot of implications in the AL West. So we'll be checking all that out. And, of course, Chiefs and Lions. I have the Lions covering. 4.5, I have them covering. I think the Chiefs win by a field goal, but it does not cover. Some great text on the text line today. We missed Mark Bavaro, Sterling Sharp, not Shannon. No love for Shannon, but we got Sterling. We got a George Kittle in there as well. We also have Lions 45, Chiefs 34. Some Super Bowl picks. I'll tell you who I'm picking in the Super Bowl. Dan Quinn and the Cowboys. Not picking them. We'll tell you more tomorrow. We come back. We got another show. We're on until 6:45 tomorrow. We'll bring back more here on the Sports Complex. Until then, be kind to each other. Be safe. Keep your underwear clean. We'll see you right back here tomorrow for more of the Sports Complex on the Horn.